My guess is that most people associate psychology mostly with questions about mental health. While that is only one of the many topics studied by psychologists, it is of course an important one, and understandably a topic many people find interesting on a personal level. Most people struggle with mental health, and even if they themselves don't have problems with it, they know others who do. It thus makes sense to know something about those issues. This video is part of my series Introduction to Psychology. See the link in the description for more information on the series. And I have already discussed self-regulation and regulation of emotions and mood earlier, so although they are important for mental health, I will not discuss them any further here. Instead, I will give brief overviews of stress, addictions and aggression. But first, I will explain how different approaches can be taken in psychology to understand and explain a phenomenon, and I will use eating disorders as an example of that. But before I dive into that topic, I have to introduce myself. My name is Jouni Vilkka, and this is my channel, TFF Teacher from Finland. Don't forget to subscribe and click the thumbs up button. As I have previously explained, explanations of human behavior can take different approaches and still be considered psychological. One, the biological level could involve looking at the physiological factors in the phenomenon, or how our evolutionary development might account for the phenomenon. Two, taking the mental level, or level of the psyche, might seem like the traditional and most obviously psychological approach. That would involve looking into the cognitive and emotional aspects of the phenomenon, how the individual experiences and interprets things. 3. Approaching the phenomenon from the social level would involve looking into the influence of other people present or the relationships between people, their social status and group memberships and so on. 4. Finally, the cultural level approach would look into the significance of cultural norms, expectations, customs and other such things relevant for the phenomenon, and perhaps compare attitudes toward the phenomenon in other cultures. For example, if we were to look into eating disorders as the phenomenon of interest to us, we would first identify the phenomenon. There are several possible diagnoses for eating disorders. 1. Anorexia nervosa is about a person trying to limit how much they eat, in many cases even starving themselves to death. 2. Bulimia nervosa involves the person eating uncontrollably and in many cases attempting to control themselves and their weight gain by later vomiting or by other unhealthy means. 3. Orthorexia nervosa refers to an excessive interest in healthy eating, which leads to harmfully strict attempts to control one's eating. I want to emphasize that it is not possible to diagnose these conditions from a person's appearance, even though some healthcare professionals unfortunately seem to think so. If we were now to attempt to look deeper into the psychology of these eating disorders, we could choose any of the 4 approaches listed earlier. For example, there may be biological factors at play, genetic, hormonal, or something related to the nervous system perhaps. Any of these things could predispose the person to developing a disorder. Looking at the issue at the level of the psyche, the mental level of psychology, we may find that the person has problems with their self-esteem. It could be also that they are driven by an aspiration to perfection or an unyielding demand for total control of their own life. These could be behaviors learned from childhood or attempts to cognitively deal with emotional issues, bad experiences like traumas, or other things arising possibly from the subconscious part of their mind. It might simply be that the reality they experience feels too much to bear. The social approach could involve looking into the individual's interpersonal relationships, the social environment they grew up in, and the role models presented to them. Perhaps there are tensions between members of the person's in-group that contributes to the phenomenon. There are clearly cultural causes to consider, as these are not even problems in all cultures. In so-called Western cultures, there may be strong pressures mediated by traditional media as well as social media and advertising everywhere to conform to certain norms of appearance. It is said that Western cultures are highly focused on appearance. Such things can cause pressure for the individual to try and adapt their body to norms, even if that might be impossible for them. Now that you hopefully understand some possible approaches to psychological phenomena, let's move on to consider some of them. I will not discuss them in great depth, but hopefully enough to give you a basic understanding. It is normal to sometimes be nervous, to experience some stress, but too much stress is a serious health risk. It also simply makes life unpleasant. There are ways to learn to control stress, or to get so used to situations that have caused stress that they no longer do so. The most basic method for reducing the effects of stress is calming oneself with breathing or by other means. Sometimes medication may be needed. The important thing is to feel the relaxation, and that can also be caused by placebos as well. At least for some, talking to others about the cause of stress can help. In some cases, even re-evaluation of the cultural significance of things related to the stressful thing might do the trick. For example, you might realize that the role expectations of your society don't need to be met, and you can make your own decisions and live your authentic life differently. It may be useful to know that stress can lead to a vicious cycle, and breaking that cycle might help reduce the experienced stress. This is how the cycle works. 1. The internal experience of stress leads you to pay attention to the physiological reactions of your body, such as shaking, sweating, change in the pitch of your voice, or it becoming strained. 2. This observation may increase the experienced stress. 3. As a result of increased stress, the reactions of your body also become stronger. For example, your pulse may become faster. 4. Those reactions may again increase the internal experience of stress. This leads back to the beginning, 1, as you pay even more attention to your physiological reactions, such as your pulse. This cycle can be harmful, as it can itself add to your stress levels unnecessarily. Funnily enough, I have managed to cause myself to pass out this way once. Another time, during a lecture I was attending on stress, of all things, it led to a panic attack, forcing me to practically run out of the classroom. The point is, don't pay too much attention to symptoms of stress. You can try to focus your attention on other things, or alleviate tension and relax your body somehow, with the help of another person, or perhaps a stress ball, or whatever works for you. Let's now approach this phenomenon of stress at the 4 levels of psychology I have been explaining, each in turn. This way, you should be able to see how each perspective adds to our understanding of the phenomenon, and none of them alone is able to give a full account of the phenomenon. The biological or physical level of stress is apparent in the physiological reactions of excitation you might notice in your own body. These can include increased pulse, restlessness or the need to move, trembling or shaking of hands, heightened pitch, and increased speed of speech, sweating, blushing, and even feeling dizzy. Physiological explanations can be given for the phenomenon. For example, it can be said that your body is experiencing a fight or flight reaction. Also, hormonal changes such as adrenaline being released into your bloodstream can be pointed out. Your genetic predisposition, or at least your innate temperament, could be seen as causes of your reactions. There are also methods of relaxation based on physiology, such as breathing techniques and some other relaxation methods, including just lying down, reducing lighting, and listening to relaxing music. Using the pharmaceutical option also belongs to this category. So does exercise, and it can be used both to alleviate symptoms of stress and to prevent the build-up of stress. At the mental level, that of the individual psyche, stress and nervousness is experienced, for example, as anxiety, desire to escape, and hate. We can be more or less aware of such emotions, although they can sometimes affect us without us realizing it, because we are too focused on other things. Being able to recognize and name emotions requires emotional intelligence, which can be improved through practice. The emotions related to stress are often accompanied by negative thoughts. We might think that we just aren't good enough, won't be able to do the thing we are supposed to do, or other such thoughts. They arise in us, and we might even say them out loud, but that doesn't mean they are true. Saying or thinking such claims may have the negative effect that we might believe them and give up, thus making them self-fulfilling prophecies. Even if we don't give up, they still damage our self-esteem and mood. Too much stress weakens our cognitive abilities, such as the ability to concentrate, recall memories, make logical inferences, and even observations. Prolonged and intensive stress can thus be really harmful even for our mental functioning, not just our mental well-being and physical health. Stress and nervousness can be explained at the mental level in several ways. For one, the person might not be able to use effective methods of emotion regulation because they lack the models, schemas, for that. They might have poor coping skills, and they might be resorting to harmful defenses. For example, they might always just try to avoid stressful situations, which is not a good long-term strategy. Lack of awareness of the stressors, the various causes of stress one is being affected by, is one possible problem. It might also be possible that there are unconscious causes of stress, such as the influence of childhood experiences. There are solutions to the problems of excessive stress on the mental level as well. Addressing the potential problems I just mentioned would be a good start. Awareness of one's coping mechanisms and learning new ones would help. Emotion regulation can be improved by experience and practice. Also, meditation, such as doing mindfulness exercises, might help. Looking at stress at the social level, we can observe changes in behavior in social circumstances and interactions. For example, the person's role in the situation can become uncertain. The social observations made under stress can be influenced so that the person begins to pay more attention to how others might interpret the situation and make assumptions about those interpretations. One might worry about what others think about oneself. There are many potential social causes of stress. Even the mere presence of other people can cause it, but especially being under their close supervision. The tone of interaction with others, the group dynamics such as peer pressure or the influence of someone higher up in social hierarchy are frequently causes of stress. How one interprets one's own role and attribution styles can also cause stress. For example, thinking that others think you are stupid, or thinking that you are stupid yourself. There are social ways to alleviate stress as well. Feeling socially accepted reduces stress. Asking for and receiving help from others is probably the most obvious way to alleviate stress socially. The support of a trusted person can be a big help in dealing with stress. Cultures differ in norms related to how stress and insecurity can be expressed and how stress can be alleviated. The ways to deal with a person expressing stress are also influenced or limited by culture. Explanations of stress at the cultural level include such things as how the worldview, especially different roles like gender, age, occupation, affect what is acceptable or not. There are big differences in what expressions of emotion and stress are accepted, for example, and also requirements about how such things are dealt with. Ways to calm down at this level could include re-evaluating one's cultural roles and norms and whether one really wants to accept them. It might be possible to switch roles or reinterpret what a role really demands. This expanded example should give you a pretty good idea of the different possible approaches to a given psychological phenomenon. I will deal with the following phenomena more briefly. Addiction means a compulsion to experience a specific emotion or state of mind, or to perform a particular act. Almost always the goal is pleasure of some sort. Often it is about trying to control one's anxiety or an attempt to feel in control of one's own life. We can get addicted to practically anything, but some common addictions are about drug use or abuse, eating, gambling, sex, physical exercise, buying things, working, and social media or the internet more generally. For example, some might say that I am addicted to coffee, but perhaps not caffeine. Rather, the experience of drinking coffee itself. What makes something an addiction is the compulsory nature of the behavior, and that it is considered harmful to oneself or others. For example, if I don't get a cup of coffee after a meal, I will probably get a headache. In that way, the habit might be a bit harmful, although I'm still not quite sure I'd call it an addiction. Then again, an addict wouldn't admit they have a problem. Usually they only do so after their loved ones, friends or boss makes the problem clear to them. It could be that coffee drinking is just such a common addiction in Finland that is generally accepted and therefore not considered an addiction. Addictions can, of course, be approached from different levels of psychology. At the physiological level, it is associated with the functioning of neurotransmitters. That can be affected by the use of intoxicating substances or strong emotional experiences. At the mental level, addictions appear as compulsions, uncontrolled behaviors. At the social level, they are often connected to social activities, or lack thereof. For example, one might be motivated to drink by one's company or by loneliness. The same is true for gambling and many other things as well. Attitudes towards addictions vary between cultures. Binge drinking until you pass out can be accepted in some, while in other cultures having any alcohol to drink might be at least frowned upon. There are, of course, differences in how available various sources of addiction are. Use of social media, doom scrolling or gambling online or offline, can become compulsive behaviors that begin to limit one's life, cause depression, or otherwise be experienced as harmful. It might lead to feelings of guilt. Other people might start to comment on how much time one spends doing those things. It might then be a good idea to assess one's behavior. Gambling, for example, might cause financial problems that can become severe and very badly affect one's relationships. Even just playing games on one's phone might become a problem if the activity takes over a growing portion of one's time. Physical exercise is one of the things that people can get addicted to. For someone who doesn't practice sports, except for going to the gym every once in a while to lose some weight, it might seem strange. It is, after all, physically hard and tiring. But as those who do practice sports are probably aware, the activity can actually feel very gratifying. Physiologically, the reason why exercise can feel so good that it can become addictive is that it can activate the pleasure system or reward system in the brain. This means that as the body undergoes hard training, which can mean playing a sport, pumping iron, doing martial arts, mountain climbing, or pretty much anything, neurotransmitters, especially dopamine, are released and affect certain areas of the brain, causing euphoric sensations. The brain is getting high of its own drugs, so to speak. Physical exercise diminishes the symptoms of depression and alters the structures of the brain. The chemical explanation of the addiction is not the only one. Looking at the mental level, it makes sense that achieving goals one has set for oneself is rewarding and succeeding at something produces joy. It is also a way to distract one's mind away from unpleasant things, or really anything. When hanging from a climbing hold with one hand, even if there is a safety rope, you may find your mind focusing on the task of not falling. This kind of focus removes all mundane thoughts and enables you to experience a Zen-like state of being aware of the present, something also sought in mindfulness exercises. This alone could be very rewarding. There is typically also a social aspect to sports, especially if you participate in a team. The social interactions with your teammates can be highly rewarding. Physical exercise can become an addiction, which can be seen in that you are no longer receiving pleasure from it, but it can begin to feel like it is something you just have to do. The sport itself is no longer appealing, but things external to it can start to feel restrictive. You might start thinking that your spouse will leave you if you are no longer in top shape, for example. Workaholism can be very similar to being addicted to sports. It can be highly rewarding to succeed in a competitive field, and many of the same mechanisms and reasons can come to play to make working an addiction. Just working a lot or working out a lot is not in itself a problem, but the activity can become a problem when it interferes with the rest of your life. Other aspects of your life can suffer. You may lose relationships because you don't have time for other people. You may end up spending money recklessly, or you may begin to develop high stress from the activity. At the same time, not doing the activity might cause symptoms of withdrawal. If you suspect you might be addicted to something, you can test it by refraining from the activity, or whatever the cause of the addiction might be, for a month or two. If you begin to notice symptoms of withdrawal, such as anxiety, you are probably addicted. It might then be a good idea to seek help with your addiction. As the last example here, I will discuss aggression. It usually includes a strong negative emotional state, such as hostility or rage. It can be turned inward to oneself in the form of a sense of inferiority, depression, and self-destructiveness. Usually, unfortunately, it is directed at other people or the surrounding environment. It can be manifested as accusations, violence, acts of vandalism, or other destructive behavior. When uncontrolled, it can be harmful to oneself because it tends to be bad for personal relationships, and it can lead to antisocial, even criminal behavior, which tends to be bad for the aggressive person as well as many others. Other forms of aggression include zeal, bigotry, and intolerance, which are also usually considered harmful behaviors, at least by rational people. Sometimes aggression can be warranted, and it is possible to go too far in not accepting this. One can become too accommodating, not being able to be genuine and honest to oneself. And of course, one can be taken advantage of by unscrupulous people. Biological level explanations can point at serotonin and testosterone as partial explanations for aggression. Young men are clearly the most violently aggressive demographic, and their testosterone levels are also at their peak. The hormone seems related to aggression, so it stands to reason that it has an important role to play with the aggressive behavior of young men. Low secretion of serotonin, the neurotransmitter, also seems to increase the risk of violent behavior. In addition to these, the hypothalamus and the pineal gland may also have something to do with aggression. If they are overactive, they seem to increase aggression. On the other hand, if they have been damaged by something, the subject can be docile. Psychologists have given various mental level explanations for aggression over the years as well. According to one obsolete and now discarded view, aggression builds up and needs to be purged in a cathartic manner. It has now been shown that such attempts to get rid of aggression actually increase it. A better explanation is the frustration aggression theory. This theory shows that a failure when close to success causes frustration, which leads to aggression. I play computer games a lot, and I know I experience this a lot, as my neighbors may be able to testify. Another explanation looks into childhood development. If a person was unable to develop basic trust with a caregiver in early childhood, their personality can fail to develop well, resulting in an inability to control their own aggression. At the social level of explanation, Albert Bandura conducted tests about learning aggression using a doll called Bobo. They are now considered classics in the field. He showed that children learn aggressive behaviors by observing adults behave aggressively toward Bobo. According to this theory of social learning, the social acceptance of a behavior enables it to increase. Cultures vary in the expressions of aggression they allow, the forms of aggression and their intensity. Some allow for more than others. Different situations can allow more than others, which may be one reason some people enjoy such situations. For example, situations related to sports teams or politics can allow for more open expressions of aggression than other situations in a given culture. In this video, I have discussed how psychology can approach the issues of mental health from the biological, mental, social, and cultural points of view. I first explained the general idea with the help of the example of eating disorders. I then gave a more in-depth example of stress. I went on to discuss addictions and aggression, which can also be seen as problems of mental health. Problems with mental health can be considered the opposite of happiness. Happiness itself is considered a goal by many, but there is no single universal source of happiness. Different people are made happy by different things. There are some things that can be said about achieving happiness, though. For one, it should not be aimed at. Trying to get happy doesn't work. Instead, there are internal and external sources of happiness that vary from person to person. External sources of happiness are things society can help or hinder, as they have to do with things like family, home, general well-being and things like that. A high standard of living, for example, does not guarantee happiness, but poverty certainly does seem to hinder it. Thus, what is needed is the fulfillment of basic needs. Beyond that, increases in material well-being do not easily increase happiness. There seems to be a rule of diminishing returns. To gain any additional happiness, more and more is required. For society, it might be better to put a cap to this sort of well-being. Internal sources of happiness arise from being in control of one's own life, being able to set one's own goals and to strive toward them. Ideologies can also play a part. We usually benefit from belonging to something greater than ourselves. Going only after one's own interests doesn't seem to make us very happy, but joining a good cause and helping others do. If you think you suffer from a mental health problem, seek professional help, or at the very least, ask your friends and family for help and support. If you feel down, possibly depressed, I will just give one hopefully useful tip. It is possible to improve your mood by using some methods, such as writing down your own sources of happiness as you become aware of them over the course of a week, say. I have already given some advice about such things during this course, and I will later return to the subject of mental health in a separate course, but remember that I am not a mental health professional. This was all for this time. I do hope to see you back on my channel soon. Bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.